Everyone, welcome to this week's CodeX group meeting. We have a fantastic presentation lined up for you. We have Julian Rossi, an instructor and researcher from the University of Amsterdam, who will speak about data-driven legal inference. But before I turn it over to Julian, I wanted to turn it over to Mark Salomon, who is the Dean of the Business School at the University of Amsterdam. So over to you, Mark.
Yeah.
And by the way, can you all hear us online? Can you give us a sign that you can hear us? You have to unmute yourself.
Okay, yes.
Yes, perfect sound. Okay, great.
Very
So
good.
over to you, Mark.
Yeah, as Roland said, I'm the Dean of the Business School of the University of Amsterdam. We just started in the legal tech domain in the business school. It is also because our law school is more a traditional law school. They are interested, but they don't have at the moment the capacity to do legal tech and more the technology part. And same holds a little bit for our science department. There also most of the computer science students have not been educated in this area and are also not so interested in the area like it seems. We started, Julien was an MBA student of us, and he did a fantastic master thesis at the European Patent Office, where he improved a search engine. And from there on, Julien and the supervisor of Julien, Evangelos Kanoulas. And Evangelos Kanoulas is a computer science professor in text analytics who used to work at Google. Started together to do research in the legal tech domain. And Julien is now going to present the work that he has done since the beginning, and he's now almost, I think, 1 year working in this area. Yeah.
Okay, thanks Mark for your kind words. Thanks Roland for the invitation. Good day to you all. So my name is Julien Rossi. I'm French, as you could guess from the accent. I'm gonna walk you today through our starting research that we have at the business school. So to set up the expectation for today, that's not so much as a deep dive into technical discoveries that we made along the way, as a first trial and a roadmap for the future of our research at the Amsterdam Business School. So an easy agenda, who we are, what's our research, how we want to do research, and some closing remarks. That should be around 15 to 20 minutes, and I will be happy to hear any comments and feedback after a while. So Evangelos Kanoulas is professor at University of Amsterdam. He's at the Institute of Informatics. He's doing a lot of research in information retrieval, text analytics. There's a link to his academic resume. I don't think we could go through in this day or even in this weekend. You can have a look at the list of achievements he has. I'm a graduate computer sciences in my first life. That was some time ago. MBA Big Data from the University of Amsterdam. I'm now lecturing in text mining. You can have a link to my LinkedIn. Please connect. It's as you will see in the presentation, that's one of our main target at the moment, to get connected to people. So, data-driven legal inference. Legal inference, as it's popular, that is what we want to do. That's the ability to evaluate whether some statement is legal or illegal with regards to existing legislation, regulations that you could put in front. So you have like the rules, the law on one side, and then you have a statement on the other side The idea is to find out whether or not this statement can stand. And we want to do it data-driven, so take a direction that is opposite to rule-based system, to logical programming as a way of doing reasoning, statistical learning, and trained on data sets, and using all these advanced tools from text mining, natural language processing, machine learning, deep learning, to put them to use to do this inference and reasoning task. That is, let's say, the basic, the motivation that we have, because the first intention as computer scientists when you read a law book, that is to think that it's a program, it's a logical program that helps you to evaluate arguments, and we want to go behind this. And we want to go more data-driven, as we say, more into AI tools, and see how they can be of use as well in this field. So an example to help us go through it. We have a case that's a person, and he said that one of his friends, he promised to give him his Tesla. That would be a nice gift. And now, 6 months after that promise was made, the Tesla is still not his. So the question is whether he can force him. So the statement would be, I can force him to give me his Tesla because he promised to do so. So what is the data we have available? We have laws, we have court decisions, historical case. Now we have the first challenge to retrieve relevant text, relevant decisions for that case. This retrieval is based on the input statement. And we have to restrain to, of course, specific collection, specific jurisdiction. And let's say in our case, my friend lives in Japan. So the jurisdiction for him will be the Japanese civil code. And in that case, we find that 2 articles will apply to that. I will not read them word by word, but basically the most important fact here is that a gift that is not made in writing can be cancelled, provided that you did not start to give a part of the gift. And in that case, that would mean that our inference that we want to get is that there's a contradiction between the statement that I can force my friend to give me his Tesla. It's in contradiction with the existing Japanese civil code. So that's the kind of example, that's the kind of reasoning that we want to put in practice. Not as much as 2 pages long cases from, let's say, the bar exam, but more simple, compact statements, and in comparison with either legislation, or we could see an extension into contract regulations. So our first task was to identify if there are some similar tasks that exist in the world, similar research. The first that comes in mind, that's the textual entailment task that is originated from here, the SNLI, multi-NLI. That's a nice collection of more than 500,000 English sentence pairs. They are labeled so that you can see if the 2 sentences in the pair, if the one on the left entails the second one, or if there's a contradiction in between, or if the relation is neutral. So one example that I put is if you have a soccer game and people playing, and you say there are some people playing a sport, you see that obviously the second sentence is entailed by the first one. It is as well as paraphrasing, as generalization. There's a very active leaderboard on this competition, and it will come back later on because that's an inspiration for existing models, existing state-of-the-art models in that task, and we will see how we can try to use them in our task. We identify as well other Q&A questions, Babi, Hotpot QA, Kangaroo. Those are tasks more about reading comprehension, and an important aspect that we see in these is that answers must include as well supporting facts. So you are supporting documents, and you have to provide a citation from that document that shows where you picked up the answer that you provide. It will come later on, but of course, in our legal statement, we are also researching to provide a ground and a basis for the inference that we do. A reference task that exists for this kind of legal entailment, and that is Collier. I would not by heart remember what the acronym stands for. That's a collection of less than 1,000, in fact, English legal statements, and how they are valid with regards to the Japanese civil code. That's where my example is coming from. So that's, as we call it, that's really an interesting starting point, but that's less than 1,000 legal statements. And as we know, most of the advanced models are, especially in natural language processing, they will be very data hungry. So 1,000 is not a lot. We make review of the papers that are state of the art for this task and that are on the leaderboard to evaluate how this could scale up to a bigger data sets and richer data sets. Relevant papers, a lot of picks from the leaderboard of SNLI, probably well-known names in the neural network community, natural language, transformers, the capsule neural networks that's provided by Hinton, the BERT that is an advance from this year. All state-of-the-art models for this task, like for the SNLI, for example. The experimental setup that we have for all these papers, that could be summarized as having two sentences. You have a kind of embedding representation engine, if you will, that is projecting these sentences into a feature space. And behind that, there's a classifier that finds, based on the interactions of these representations, if you're going to a contradiction, or if you're going to an entailment, if you're going to two sentences that are expressing the same thing or expressing contradictory things. So what we did for our experimentation is to try these models in this way and try them on the Collier data set, which is small. We can use it either as fine-tuning for existing pre-trained model or for the training of the model, but we can expect that it's not going to provide huge performance. And indeed, what we observe is that we never get very far away from the random classifier in our task of entailment or contradiction. So not to enter into details, but we don't find good generalization, and we blame it on the size of the data set, the richness of that data set, and on the setting. If you have a 10 million parameter model, it is really hard to train anything useful on such a small number. Plus, of course, we have always the fear, is there a stone that we did not turn? Is there a way of proceeding that we did not use? That's also going to be part of our ongoing research. So limitations that we identify, dataset size, and if we have a look at the SNLI task, we see a lot of, it's looking like paraphrasing and concept generalization over sentences, which is not exactly the same as legal, as the reasoning based on law articles, where there's a bit more logic into it. If this and this and that, this is not really captured, and this is not also in the source material of these data sets. So the way we see the roadmap for ourselves for the coming years, let's say, it's solving a few challenges. So if we say that textual entailment is not the best way to go forward, our challenge is, okay, is it a technical problem that we need to solve the way we use these models, or is it a foundational problem? These models, they are not built for this kind of task. So we need to find, we'll need to find something else. That is the first challenge. Another avenue we are going to investigate, advanced models, they are very data hungry. So what sort of data sets do we need? And then the second question is, can we come up with large and rich data sets? And in fact, more than can we come up, I would more go for the, how are we going to come up with these large and rich data sets? NLP tools, it is observed they have difficulties with legal text. We observed it. Mark mentioned the paper we had with Evangelos on patent. We observed it on analyzing patent claims, which are written in legal language. We use the Stanford Core NLP, so it's right the right place to talk about it. And we observe, these difficulties. The constituency parsing of sentences, the entity extraction, the dependency parsing, it's not working as well as on standard text, and it has a reason. Most of the text corpus that these models are trained on is general literature, let's say, and language parlance has a very specific way of, very specific syntax and a very specific way of introducing information and introducing statements. So there's also a side question. Can we retrain on a proper data set? Can we have, again, how can we come to a data set that would be useful for these models? Because all these models, they can be retrained. There's the API for that. So can we come up with the right data set to provide a better training and better outcome? Another side quest, legal inference, it requires explainability. There's a lot about explainable AI at the moment, and I don't see how this could evade it. So we need to explain why we're seeing that this is opposite to the legislation, or why we're seeing that what you state is okay with regards to the constraints you have. So how could we explain that? So can we come up with a language model, and that language model would have parameters that would explain to us which arguments were mined and which arguments were evaluated against legislation? Can we have one of the explanation framework used, one that is derived from question and answering models, like this kangaroo and this other task where they ask you to quote and provide arguments for your answer? Can it come from that? In the group of Evangelos at the University of Amsterdam, the Faculty of Science, there are people working on question answering model, there are people working on explainable AI. Can we use this knowledge and attract it towards the work we do with legal? So our plan, in a few words, our plan that is to lead, participate, and we say we can lead it, we can participate in an existing collaborative effort, multidisciplinary team, In Amsterdam already, we have contact within the Faculty of Science, the Institute of Informatics. We have contacts within the law school. We have contacts in the private sector as well with law firms. We are at the business school, and it's one of the big tasks of the business school to network and create connections in between different areas. So we are starting this. We want to define, organize, create, curate data sets, because data sets are the key to anything we want to do downstream. And we need a lot of different people to do that. So we want to have this effort towards academia, of course, private sector, non-profit. And I mention non-profit because we expect that some of the work done on this legal inference, some of the work done on the data set can be useful for other tasks downstream that we don't know at the moment, but they can be useful for non-profit, for citizen platforms, for transparency platforms and citizen information, not only for private sector, law firms that we could imagine would be the first customers. Okay, thank you for your attention. On closing remarks, coming back to a point that I made at the beginning, that is a starting point for us. And I think I cannot stress it enough. We are very much looking for forward collaborations. We are very much looking to expand our horizons of not only contributors, but as well of users of our work. We expect everything to be useful for non-profit as well as for legal business. Thanks for listening. If you want to contact us anytime, our mail address, and we'll be happy to hear from you any comments, feedback that you will have. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
We have a question from the remote audience, from Badan. Two questions. First, which classifiers did they use? Random forest, SVMs, etc. And the second, did they test the system with more specific questions than the one presented as an example? Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we tested the models that we tested. That is models from the SNLI. So they are basically based with the classifier they have. That is basically a perceptron at the end of this representation engine, and you get two representations for sentence 1, sentence 2. There's a fusion mix and match engine, and then after that there's 2 or 3 layer perceptron. So to speak. So to answer the question, random forest, no, we did not try it already per se. And on the specificity of the examples, we have only this Collier data set at the moment, so it's examples of this kind. There are more easy sentence, like say, stating that a minor can adopt a child, and then legislation says no, only a major. There are a bit more longer sentence, would be more like this one. So if A does this and B does that and C does not want to sign this, then something like this. But that's the material we have available now, and we are starting an effort to create more and more material like this.
Great.
All right. Any other questions for Julian? So what's the overall goal of the project? So it seems like you feel like the sort of existing NLP techniques are not good enough because the data set is not good enough. So you want to create this consortium or partnership with people in private practice and academic institutions to build out a better data set to then be able to do this data-driven inference. And then is that sort of then a resource that you want to make available to the rest of the world, or there's a for-profit arm, a non-profit arm? What's the overall kind of mission of the project?
Let's say the big goal at the end that would be this ideal, I don't know, robo lawyer or reasoning kind of automaton. But what we see is that this is an interesting goal, but on the way to that, there's a lot of things to be done, and a lot of things that would be profitable academically speaking, in terms of creating knowledge, and that would be useful and therefore profitable for as well private sector or for new ventures. So that's really how we see the structure of it. The backbone is we want to be able to do this reasoning, and we want to be able to base it on data and not on a decomposition of rules. And along that way, we could either produce data sets that will be made available to the academic world, and that will be made available for everyone. So resource papers and public data sets. And that either these data sets could be of use, or the methodology to build the data sets could be used by somebody else to build the data set for his own legislation or his own regional interest. And that all these tools, these NLP tools, for example, that would be also a great academical benefit to improve them in this specific language, let's say. And that would be also a step towards public information for citizens, like publicly available kind of chatbots to get legal information in an easier way to the public. So I would not say that right now we envision exactly what we are going to venture it on the way, and in terms of spin-offs or startups, but it's the final goal that we have, and we find that on the way we envision that there will be a lot of useful products.
And so what do you think is sort of the kind of low-hanging fruit kind of use cases then? It might not be a commercial venture or anything, but just low-hanging fruit use case is a first use case, and then what, in order to accomplish that use case, what kind of data sets would you need? Would it have to be like something in the public administration to do this kind of legal chatbot that you mentioned, or something in contracts, to help like corporate law departments do some ask some queries based on a contract data set? What do you see there?
What we see at the moment is something with labor law in the Netherlands, and specifically all the disputes around firing people.
Yeah.
Okay. The disputes about working contract. So there's an existing effort in the Netherlands to bring in more information to the public, that you wouldn't need any time to meet with a lawyer to evaluate your chance of a dispute. And yeah, that is one collaboration that we have starting, and that's an area where we see low-hanging fruits. Easily available information on your situation, for example, provided some facts. And now, as with regards to the data that we need for that, there's, understanding the legislation, there's annotation of these legislations, there are court decisions with fact qualifications with regards to existing articles. And this is the starting points we see, and this is the first project we're going to do in the coming months. Let's say.
That's exciting. Great. Is there another? Go ahead.
Yeah. Is there any effort to use, say, law students to label data sets?
Oh, that is exactly what we're going to do in the next month.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly the collaboration we have, and it was discussed again this week that we are going to come and visit the classes they have in technology, the technology classes they have, and that we are having a few projects, let's say, ready on which some students will work with us, and dataset labeling, definitely.
Because I was thinking there's always these quizzes, right, at the beginning of class. If you just have the quiz questions and then you get all the students to answer, and it's about classifying legal text. If you just keep doing that, you sort of start building a data set.
Yeah.
But cool. Okay.
No, that's
Cheap labor.
Yeah.
Well, it's okay, cheap, but it's also qualified. It's important. They know what they're talking about, and we have an idea of what could be the job of a lawyer, but we don't know the content. We have more scientific, academic background in this text retrieval and so on. See, it's the meeting of this that will create something useful. And we have to span.
It might also actually, if you have multiple people and then the answer is very clear, like everyone answers the same, then you know that that's an easy area to maybe get into because the answer is pretty obvious. And
Yeah.
I met somebody from Austria some time ago. Their kind of chamber of not chamber, so the labor representation there, and they were looking into modeling how all the rules around overtime and being paid for overtime, how that works, because there's a lot of disputes around that. But they were taking a different approach. They were wanting to create more of an expert system, going around the rules. Rules. But it became pretty complex then. But anyways, I think that's an interesting use case that probably once you have your robo-lawyer, and that's the legal chatbot, that will get a lot of use, right? Because a lot of people are in a workplace and work disputes are pretty common. So that's a great, that would be a very good showcase project.
Labor law is a showcase that talks to a lot of people.
Yeah,
that's also, there's of course a lot of, even in a legal tech, going to M&A, mergers, acquisitions, business, all these B2B, because there's a lot of money flowing around, let's say. But some section of the civil code, of the labor law that is actually talking to a lot of people in their lives. So that's also an interesting impact.
Yeah, well, I think it's cool about the project. I think somebody else had a question online, but what's also cool about it is like it's a really sort of foundational question that you ask, very basic research question, but you're being able to answer it, and you're sort of taking a very applied approach and trying to test it out in the real world, which I think makes for a cool project.
So we have a couple of people online. One is Jana. So I've asked Jana to either unmute the mic or type the comments into chat. So I don't know if that person has stepped away or not. So we'll hold that one for now. But Yongzin asks, I'd like to get an example of labeling of text. How much information in the label?
Unfortunately, I would not have it right here. But let's say if we're talking about court decisions, for example, the interesting task is to label which facts were used to qualify, to make the legal qualification. So this link between what is in the law, which is very abstract and generic, and it has to be, and the facts of life that happens, to grasp a data-based comprehension of what usually qualifies as a breach of this, a breach of that. So that's the sort of work that is done currently in a narrative way in all these gazettes and review of court decisions, that we would want to yeah, we want to have it more systematically. So that's the kind of example. Now to give right now an example of which labels exactly, I don't have this in mind.
And I actually had a question of my own. Can you compare, contrast your project with Mirel, which I believe is one out of a university in Belgium?
No, Luxembourg. I think.
Luxembourg, yeah.
Luxembourg.
I know that Mirel, because I know that the KU Leuven has announced that they also wanted to start a data-driven sort of reasoning, and I think we're going along the same lines. And it was presented in December in Groningen at the conference Zurich. So there are also contacts there, and Mira, we discussed with them. They are building these data sets, if my memory does not fail me, and they were also at this conference in Groningen, and I'm also in contact with them. Their main task would be to work on data sets.
Cool. Yeah, maybe there's some overlap.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Hi, it's Jana. I actually have a few comments. One, at the beginning, it's very ambitious because textual entailment is actually the most challenging task in natural language understanding. So as I understand correctly, you have a prerequisite task, not just the textual entailment. You have to locate first the text 1 and text 2 in your data resources, right? So there is the location of the two text, one of them, because the other one you have as a statement, before actually doing textual entailment. Is that correct?
Exactly.
So you have actually a task prerequisite to textual entailment. Yes. One comment so that's one. The other one is, did you take a look at the papers by the RTE competition, the textual entailment competition in NLP? I mean, they're not, they are smooth text, not real and not legal, but I think you could learn a lot from the methods that are there, and they probably a confirmation that no matter how much data you have, there are going to be a lot of instances that you cannot do with statistical techniques. So you might have to do a combination of reasoning with statistics and reasoning, whatever reasoning is statistics, reasoning with, so it's a hybrid. I think you have to get a hybrid one. And maybe you want to look at Professor Manning in Stanford about, there's a YouTube video or lecture where he says, can machine reasons? And he talks about how deep learning has progressed, and the main question really, can we do natural language understanding with deep learning? So there are many things, many comments that I have. I could email you later. One question also, one comment is that once you locate text 1 and text 2, I mean, textual entailment is very challenging. The information that you're looking for in order to decide whether something is contradictory or not might not be in the text themselves. So you have to have world resources, external knowledge in order to answer your question. And just a comment, a follow-up on what Roland said about the low-hanging fruit. It might be that you could use textual entailment in e-discovery and information extraction because they all relate to each other. So some of the questions that other people are working in legal information extraction and legal e-discovery can use your system because everyone, well, in all language, we have to do inference. That's it. Thank you.
Well, that's up to me to say thank you for all the comments. Yeah, I'm looking forward if we can communicate.
Yeah, you should connect. It seems like could be a very fruitful
It's a very ambitious project.
She's trying to, sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Diana. How can you?
I'm just saying it's a very ambitious project because textual entailment is extremely challenging. And natural language understanding is not a solved problem, obviously.
No. Yeah, well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And yeah, I'm looking forward if we can communicate offline on these topics.
I don't know if you had any chance to look at Dan Katz's work too. He and his collaborator at Chicago Kent, they do a lot in legal prediction, the Supreme Court prediction, but also in they open sourced, I think, some of their contract analytics kind of tools last year. I don't know if any of that could be of help to your project. I don't know if they made any data sets available for that too, or just the algorithms. So, all right. Anyone have any more questions?
There's yeah.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. This is Vidan. Just to pick up on what you just said about Daniel Katz. That's exactly what my comment was, that on the higher levels of jurisdiction, when certain classifiers are used, I think Katz used the random forest one, and in Sheffield they used the support vector machine for predictability of European court decisions. So I guess if you would try to pull...
Ask Kiana to send her email to do that.
So I don't know if you can hear me.
No, we can still hear you. Yeah, can you repeat your question?
No, so my question was, did you consider starting with your NLP application from top to the bottom, so from the jurisdictions, from Supreme Court jurisdictions, and then go down to lower jurisdictions for predictability purposes? I'm not sure if I am being clear.
Well, I'm not sure I can pick up on that now.
No, I think what he's asking is like the initial data set, you have the training data set. Is it from Supreme Court or is it from the lower court?
Oh, the first data set, let's say the first data set of court decisions that we can use in the Netherlands, there's it's an archive of court decisions from court at all levels. And it's in fact mostly, I would say, yeah, that's first instance and courts of appeal. But we would not go straight to just the Supreme Court. And we've been having a look as well on the archives of Court Listener, which has a lot as well of court decisions from all levels of jurisdictions
yeah, it's very
around here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So that if we say we are focusing on labor law, for example, then most of the work will happen at low-level jurisdictions. Most of the disputes will be there.
Okay, Yongzhen wants to chime in.
Well,
Yongzhen, go ahead.
sure. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay. Well, the competing method is using the old-fashioned way of using the logic inference with the rule engine and so forth. And to use this method, you must have some kind of advantage over it. I guess that one of the pain points of using logic inference is to formalize the laws in the books. And that's a enormous task. Mm-hmm. However, as I see this, the labeling effort and the processing of the labeling, that the effort can be even bigger than putting the laws in the books into formalized ways. And so that's my observation. What do you think?
So if I understood well, yeah, your question is, would my effort to make a data set and label it, would it be the same amount as transforming the civil code into a kind of logic program?
Yeah, one reason that there is only 1K of data, labeled data there, is indicative of the enormous effort to produce a labeled data.
Yeah, I hear your question. In terms of feasibility, let's say, that's part of what we say when we want to organize and create the method to make the data set. That's not only have a couple of students annotating things and doing the data set, but that's also from there create a method, maybe crowdsource, to further students, for example, and have a method that would leave, like, let's say, an Amazon Mechanical Turk, but with only low students, that we could crowdsource and get more done than with just a few students of our own. And there's, of course, after that, the task of automatically annotating based on that. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but we have an idea of indeed the amount of data that it is, and that it's not something that we are going to do or to have done by just one or two people behind a laptop. Mm-hmm. And to take up on what you were saying about saying old-fashioned and logic, we might, and it was said before, we might at some point come to a more hybrid, let's say, beast than a pure 100% AI. Yeah. The discussion we have around that is that there's a lot of traction towards the current state and towards this logical programming of the law, let's say. So we need to set ourselves really apart, even if we come back closer later on. So it is not one extreme or the other. We need to state the goal to the other extremes so that we do not end up attracted into it. But for us, it's not a black and white.
Yeah, so maybe there's some lessons that the folks at CaseText could also share. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're close friends. Some of our fellows started the company and working there. Their initial approach was to I think put the case law out there and then invite like experts around the country to comment on the case law, to annotate it, and so they built this kind of network of folks, of experts who would sort of annotate the law, and later on, so now they have this kind of engine called Kara, which is sort of a way to where you can feed in a brief that's exchanged in litigation, and then that automatically through contextual search kind of pulls in like all the relevant resources, cases that are in favor, cases that are against, so you don't have to. It helps you do your research, right? You've been served with the brief, and it automatically pulls all the relevant cases. You should look at that, and I'm happy to connect you with them if they can be of any help. All right. Any other questions?
How big is your effort? Like you need 10 people for 2 semesters or 2 quarters, or your rough estimate, like how many students you need for how long?
I would question. I don't have a figure in mind. Let's say I don't have a figure in mind. Probably not hundreds of students, or probably, as you say, 10. And I would figure out that it's a repeated effort of 1 or 2 semesters to get get proposing. But that's a logistic challenge that we don't have the figures already. We're going to start with 2 students in the next month, and I guess that's going to give us the right metrics. But yeah.
All right. Is there another question online or? No. Well, in that case, let me thank you again, Julian, for coming in, and congratulations on the cool project. Please keep us posted. And thank you all for coming today for our special session this week. And we have a session next Thursday.
Actually, our next meeting is February 7th. So.
Oh, February 7th.
Yeah, back to our usual day and time.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, Julian.
Great.
I thought that